My daughter thought she had married the perfect man, charming, successful, and always saying the right things. But I saw something nobody else noticed. He was not interested in her heart. He was interested in what he thought I was hiding. For years, I kept a warehouse in the city center. Nobody knew what was inside except me. Then one afternoon, my phone rang. The warehouse manager sounded terrified. "Sir, your son-in-law is here. They has bolt cutters at..." That moment, I realized the trap I had spent months preparing was finally about to close. For more than 30 years, I built my business from nothing. Long days became long years. And eventually, those years became a fortune that allowed me to give my family a comfortable life. My daughter Emma never had to worry about money. And because of that, I always feared someone would eventually come into her life. For the wrong reasons. When she introduced me to Daniel, everyone seemed impressed by him. He was smooth, confident, and knew exactly how to make people like him. My daughter was completely in love, but something about him never felt genuine to me. As the months passed, my concerns grew stronger. Daniel asked strange questions that most future sons-in-law would never ask. He wanted to know details about my assets, properties, investments, and insurance policies. During family dinners, he somehow managed to steer conversations toward money. Whenever I mentioned business, his eyes seemed to light up with unusual interest. Everyone else thought he was simply curious, but I noticed the pattern. He cared less about becoming part of the family and more about discovering what he believed I was hiding. One thing especially fascinated him. Years earlier, I had purchased an old warehouse in the city center. It was a large building that rarely received visitors. Whenever Daniel learned something new about it, he became noticeably excited. He repeatedly asked why I kept paying for a warehouse that appeared unused. I always smiled and changed the subject. The less information he received, the more obsessed he became. Soon, his curiosity turned into an unhealthy fixation. Over time, I quietly began investigating him. I hired a private investigator who uncovered information Daniel had worked very hard to hide. Before meeting my daughter, he had accumulated significant debt. Several failed business ventures had left him desperate for money. Even worse, there were reports from former partners who claimed he manipulated people financially whenever opportunities appeared. The evidence painted a troubling picture. I wanted to protect my daughter, but I also needed undeniable proof before confronting him. That is when I created a plan. I intentionally allowed rumors to circulate among family members that the warehouse contained valuable assets connected to my company. I never confirmed the story, but I never denied it either. Every time Daniel asked questions, I responded with vague comments that fueled his imagination. Soon he became convinced that something extremely valuable was hidden inside. Exactly as I expected, his behavior became increasingly reckless. Several weeks later, the warehouse manager called me with alarming news. Daniel had arrived unexpectedly and demanded access to the building. When he was refused entry, he remained outside watching the property for hours. Security cameras captured him studying locks, entrances, and blind spots. At that point, I knew he was preparing to do something desperate. Instead of stopping him immediately, I decided to let the situation reveal his true intentions once and for all. The call finally came on a rainy afternoon. The manager spoke so quickly I could barely understand him. Daniel had returned carrying bolt cutters and was attempting to force his way inside. Rather than panic, I calmly grabbed my keys and headed toward the warehouse. What Daniel did not know was that several security cameras were recording every movement. The private investigator was present. The warehouse manager was present. Even local authorities had been informed in advance that a potential trespassing incident might occur. When I arrived, Daniel had already cut through the first lock. He looked shocked to see me standing there. For a moment, neither of us spoke. His face shifted from confidence to panic as he realized there were witnesses everywhere. I simply asked one question: "Why are you here?" Instead of answering, he started making excuses about checking on family property. Nobody believed him. The evidence was overwhelming. Then came the moment he had been waiting for. I opened the warehouse doors. Daniel expected gold, cash, antiques, or hidden investments. Instead, he found something completely different. Inside were thousands of records documenting the history of my company. Family photographs, charitable projects, employee recognition archive, and decades of memories that held emotional value but very little financial value. There was no treasure, no secret fortune, no hidden wealth. The entire fantasy existed only inside his imagination. As disappointment washed across his face, the investigator revealed the financial reports and evidence gathered over several months. The truth was finally exposed. My daughter stood silently beside me as she listened to details she had never known. The man she trusted had secretly been pursuing money from the beginning. Every suspicious question, every attempt to learn about my assets, and every lie suddenly made sense. The reality was impossible to deny. Daniel tried defending himself, but his explanations collapsed under the weight of the evidence. My daughter was devastated. She realized that the man she loved had crossed a line no honest person would ever cross. The warehouse had never contained wealth. It had contained something far more valuable, the truth. And that truth destroyed the image Daniel had spent years building. In the weeks that followed, my daughter chose to separate herself from him. It was one of the most difficult decisions of her life. But she understood that trust, once broken at that level, could never fully return. Watching her go through that pain was heartbreaking. Yet it was better than watching her spend decades with someone who viewed relationships as opportunities for financial gain. Today, the warehouse still stands exactly where it always has. Most people would see an ordinary building. For me, it represents a lesson. Greed has a way of revealing itself. People who chase shortcuts often expose their true character when they believe a reward is within reach. My son-in-law thought he was breaking into a building filled with riches. Instead, he walked directly into the truth he had spent years trying to avoid. And in the end, karma did the rest. Some people spend their lives searching for hidden treasure. My son-in-law found something much more dangerous: the truth. And once the truth came out, there was no luck, no excuse, and no lie strong enough to keep his life from falling apart.